Pop check, pop, recording, pop, tap, boom, pop, pop, boom, ba doom, boom, boom, ba boom, ba boom, boom, ba doom, boom, 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 ba boom, boom. It's the Throttle Dogs with Rich and CJ. That's it, right?
Video mode. Yep. Hi everybody, it's Race Dog of the Throttle Dogs. I'm here for a couple different reasons. Number one, I like burgers, very American thing, and the Ford GT. So we're going to do a review of In-N-Out Burger Animal Style and Ford GT Heritage Style. Up next, on Throttle Dog.
Hey,
Hello fellow Throttle Doggies, it's Race Dog. I'm here with the new Ford GT.
dude, I'm here too.
Doc Dog's here too, but he's on camera mode right here. Wait, did you just... This thing has a selfie mode, this is great. So the new Ford GT 2019 Heritage Edition, just picked it up yesterday from Montana. And a couple things I want to talk to you about why this car is so cool. Okay, so follow me around the car. Number one, this combination of the blue and the orange, the Gulf Heritage colors, representing the car that won Le Mans in 1968 and 1969. That's currently privately held in a collection and just went up Goodwood the other day. The whole car is built out of carbon fiber, just like a McLaren. It has a completely different suspension setup though. It's very different. And I think that if you are a race car fan and you've watched the Ford GT dominate at Le Mans and IMSA and WEC the last couple of years, then you of course would geek out about this too. The race car and the street car look almost identical. The only difference is the sort of prolaptic rear diffuser that's a little bit different in the race car. But the street car is exquisite. The carbon fiber and the craftsmanship of everything, really nice. Everything looks perfect. Like there's not a flaw on the entire car. When they bring it to you on the truck, it's not even wrapped or anything. They wax it and polish it and everything on the way to you, and then they drop your car and 4 other cars off kind of along the way. So really quick, active aerodynamics, super cool about the Ford GT. It's got a super fast hydraulic system, and you can actually, with the touch of a button, lift it, put it in track mode, drop it, put the wing up, all sorts of cool stuff. The car has a huge radiator extractor fan to try to create a little bit of active downforce here by sucking the hot air off of the back of the radiator and funneling it over the sides of the car. It creates a little bit more nose pressure, a little bit more downforce, and evacuates some of that hot air around the body, so it doesn't go over the top of the car and get washed up, you know, with the engine heat.
The ladies don't like hot air.
The ladies don't like when you're full of hot air, and your engine and your turbos don't like it either. One of the cool things about the car though is that it matches the front and the rear downforce really effectively. So here you have these little like kind of mail slots. They're not for sliding into your DMs. They're actually for downforce. And what it does is there's a ram, a hydraulic ram that'll close these off, and it'll block these off. So when you're in track mode, then it'll make more air kind of wedge up against this and suck the front of the car down, so there's less air getting underneath the car and inside this area. There's also a high speed mode, what we call like VMAX mode on the wheel. You can kind of click through it, and then it'll do the same thing to create a different kind of level of turbulence, so that you can trim it out and maximize the hit 217 miles an hour, which sounds pretty fun. Maybe next year at the Tour de Force in Sun Valley I can do that. But the carbon numbers on the car represent the number that the car in 1968 that won the race at Le Mans had on the side. And it's really neat to see this super cool carbon inlay as an option, so you can tell that this is a real Heritage Edition and not a wrap job from you know, some local shop. Down through here you have this big, you know, vent where the air comes out from underneath. I like to call this the gravel cannon in a lot of the modern cars now. It's where you get a lot of pickup from the tires and as the air comes from behind the tires and the gravel comes off the road, it gets shot under here. Ford really thought of this well to keep the air clean on the side of the car, and they threw like almost like a shelf so that this air stays really tight to the side of the car, and you don't get rocks flying into the radiators and the intercoolers in the back here. You get a little bit of intake here to create brake cooling, but for the most part, you're going to be trying to get as much of this air to go as fast as possible and prevent it from getting underneath and losing downforce. The more suction you get on this section of the car, which is why you have the arrow coming off here, the side blade, that just keeps air from getting sucked in the sides, which would destabilize the rear of the car. Moving around to the back, everything's carbon, everything's really lightweight. The biggest, I would say, impracticality of the whole car is the rear trunk, if you want to call it that. It's that's all you can fit in there.
That's a trunk, man?
You can fit an In-N-Out burger meal for one person in there.
There's not enough junk in the trunk.
You can't put any junk in the trunk. This is like a large-handed, skinny-waisted kind of car.
I see.
If you catch my drift. So that's a little bit funky. You can see the infamous 3.5 liter V6 EcoBoost in there. Everything's carbon, so it's really neat. The dipstick is actually integrated into here. So you pull this off, it's blazing hot. I just burned my hand.
It's okay, man. It's all for the gram.
I probably shouldn't do that. That's too hot. We'll have to do that a little bit later. It's like 100 degrees out here. Akrapovic titanium exhaust. Very expensive option, but essential. Just anything you can do to enhance your car sound-wise, I think, is a big deal. Little things that you don't ever see until you get the car. These are little gurney flaps that are actually active, and they micro adjust.
They're active?
Yeah, they're active. So they actually lean down and flatten out at certain phases depending on what mode you're in. And then when you're in high speed mode or track mode, then it's a different height. So it's kind of neat.
I actually never knew that.
Exactly. That's why we're here on Throttle Dog, showing you what's up. So if we move around to the side of the car.
Oh, do you want to talk about these taillights? Why they are hollowish?
Yeah. So you get heat extraction through these, kind of like the opposite of the Dodge Demon or the Hellcat or whatever. So the whole idea, this whole car is designed around efficient airflow. So you're getting directional airflow from the big intercoolers here, and then you're evacuating air out of the back of the car through the taillights, which is pretty sweet. So everything's obviously got to be very heat sensitive, just in order to get the car to run well. But if you kind of dive in a little bit, and you can see really how race car oriented this car is. They've done some stuff on the car that's really, really spectacular. One of the things that I really like, we're on the passenger side here, but you can get close to the car because the door has a big cutaway. So when you actually get in, even though it's a wide sill, you don't have to, you're not really risking your footwork on anything. So it's a little bit more like the LaFerrari in that sense than the P1, where the P1, I feel like the seats are a little bit further apart than this, and you really have to kind of get a little bit more intimate with the seat before you can actually sit in it. Whereas this one, the seat itself is bolted to the tub, so that doesn't move at all. The backrest can adjust a little bit. It's got 17 degrees of yaw to it, or a lean, but you know, it's not, I would say, a terribly roomy car. So as you get in, you get in this way. The seat is always as far back as it can go, so it gives you the most kind of entry, so a bigger person can kind of get in.
For the audience, they saw the key move there, which is take your phone out of your back pocket before you sit in.
Yeah. So the passenger side has a footrest here, where you have like your heel guard. So when those videos where watch Nürburgring driver scare the shit out of his girlfriend, she would have a good foot place to hold on to right here and, really kind of brace herself. There's not a lot of room, you're really kind of tucked in here, and although there's a chance I can lean back a little bit, it's not maybe like the most, I would say, long distance ride, but versus the 05, 06 Ford GT, massive improvement. The seat itself is comfortable, it's fairly squishy, it's a good angle, and then gives you a good view of the driver and all that stuff. And there is actually a little bit of headroom here. I'm 6'1" with a big butt, so I sit kind of tall in the seat. But you can really put a helmet on and fit, I would say, somewhat casually in here without being too cramped. But the only thing is that's a little bit strange is like I can literally steer the car from over here. I mean, I'm so close to the steering wheel that I don't even, my left shoulder is against the seat and I can still reach across. So it would allow for some really kinky race car coaching if a track day went wrong. That's all I'm going to say. But it's nice because, you know, because it's so small, the passenger can kind of be counted on to do all the nav stuff and the HVAC stuff. The buttons themselves are metal, which is cool because if you're wearing gloves, you can feel that tactility, that you can feel that grindy, grippy surface in there. The air conditioning works really well. There's not a lot of airflow because of the taper of the car, and you're really in there tight. But your phone fits really effectively, you know, right there, which is kind of cool. So, you know, you can still watch people slide into your DMs as you're gramming.
What about that, you know, the see-through part of that?
Oh, yeah, so it's kind of funny. Like, I didn't really realize this was the case, but there's a sort of floating bridge here between the carbon shelf of the dash and then the actual windshield. Like, so this aesthetically, I think, really helps out because then it's going to create a real matte effect. So your eyes are going to have good contrast looking out, and you're not going to get a lot of glare on the bottom of the thing there. Because on the P1 or the 918, some of those all carbon cars like this one, you have a tendency to really get blinded or have a lot of residual reflection onto the windshield. This doesn't have any of that, which is cool because you need that if you're going to be having this effectively short of a windshield. It's very Huracan Performante-ish in terms of the height between the bottom of the roof and the top of the dash. It's not really that high. It's like, if I had to do a dramatic, you know, I wear a 13 shoe, and so it's like you don't even have a foot effectively between the top of the dash. You might only have a couple. You have a banana height. You don't even have a shoe height, unless you're a small person, which is the different story. But as a full-grown person, showing you from this side is kind of interesting. The steering wheel itself actually articulates a lot. It moves all the way out to here, so you can get really
stock dog size right there.
Yeah, so you can get super close. When I drive, I like to have the steering wheel close to me, and so this feels a lot more like a prototype than when you drive a GT3 RS or a GT2 RS, which has, to me, a very vertical seat. And the reason why I always like the P1 seat or the Senna seat is because I feel like it rotates you forward a little bit, so you're a little bit more leaned back in the fetal position. And when you sit in this, it really does that for you. You can move the pedal box forward and backwards to get a really good feel of having your knees low and your arms close, so you can steer quickly and you're not feeling like this and you're not feeling like this. I don't like driving the car like this. I really like to have my elbows down and my hands up in my face. And the reason why you can do that in this car is because you have the shift lights going across here. So we can demonstrate all that from the road test. Overall, I would say...
Can you demonstrate Bucci's driving position in this car?
Bucci would actually have his left foot from the passenger seat and be driving he'd be driving from here, which I think theoretically, if I was wearing the right shoes, I could actually just drive the car completely from this seat. I would never have to sit, which would be good for resale value, because then you would never have the bolsters worn out. If you were careful enough, you could actually, I'd probably want to take my shoe off before I did this, get my nice boots on.
That's impressive, man. This is an all-star pitcher showing his athleticism.
I'm on the brake pedal, I'm on the gas pedal. I could definitely drive this thing around. Like the pits, that would be actually funny at a track day, just to drive it around like 6 miles an hour and just left foot brake, left foot gas. Definitely be difficult, but it can be done. I think at some point somebody's gonna ghost ride the whip. They're gonna Bucci whip this thing
from the right. That's a whole new level of coolness, man.
We might see that at Pebble Beach. I'm going to throw it out there. I didn't really think about that until now, but we're as we like to ad lib and come up with something. I think that could be a challenge.
Well, you see, that way I can maybe sit in the other seat and throw smoke bombs out. Do you know? Yeah,
you could just be like DMing the whole time.
Exactly.
And just flipping out like orange and blue grenades.
Right.
And then just let it eat.
Exactly.
You know? And then I could just be kind of putting along, and then I can pull a paddle. I can even pull the paddle over here. Right. That's wild. I mean, you can leave it in auto. Obviously, you would probably want to do that for safety's sake, but you know, Why don't you slide around?
We're talking about safety driving from the passenger.
There's definitely diminishing returns for safety when you're talking about driving from the right side. It's definitely not an autonomous vehicle, so unless you have incredible dexterity, flexibility, and good feel for your left foot for like maybe doing some shifter carts or something, it might not be advisable to do that. So we don't endorse this fully. So yeah, and my chassis number ends in an 8, which is cool because, you know, I guess that's a lucky number. But K is the year code, and then 148, I guess, is they're making 148 of them this year or something like that. I don't know, but I'm an 8. I end on an 8, which is good. That's a thing, right? You would know better than that.
Yeah, 8 is good in Chinese. Yeah.
It's a good Chinese.
So when are you gonna
Chinese, Rich? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. So when are you gonna take all these stickers off? All these.
So I have to clear bra the car because they tell you when you get the car that you're not allowed to clear bra it for a certain date based on the fact that they need 3 weeks or 2 weeks for the paint to cure. So we're not allowed to clear bra the car for another 4 days. So that's when we're gonna take it over there in a couple more days and do like a small paint correction. The car came out immaculate. It wasn't like some of the cars that I've taken delivery of in the last couple of years that they've massive swirls or anything. I think Multimatic and Ford really go all out, and they're treating this like an ultimate series level car. They feel like this is the $1 million deal, even though the MSRP is kind of more of a 500 or 600. Still, at this point, I wouldn't say that this car lacks anything. And if you were able to get one at MSRP, I don't think there's any question as to the value, the beauty, or the handling of the car. At least what I've experienced so far. It's super raw, feels like a race car, and then has a lot of cool little Easter eggs and tricks. And maybe we'll show you some of the electronics coming up.
Sure.
Driver's side, when you get in, it's always kind of nerve-wracking when you're getting into a car like this because you're not really sure what to expect. You don't know, is it going to be hard to get into, is it going to be comfortable? The one thing that you should know before you ever get in there is the proper technique for opening the door. So it's got like this little cup right here for your fingers, and when you close it, you just close it and let it go from here. But to get in, you got to slide it in and lift it up. You can do the pinky, you can do the finger out there, or you can. I don't know if maybe you can do 2 fingers. I was thinking to myself, better make it 3. Anyways,
You're enjoying that a little too much, man.
This is where you put the gas in, which you have to be careful about because this is obviously a very sensitive area. You can't just like a truck just slam it in there because you might blink it off the buttress right here. You got to be careful not to bounce it off the buttress. You know?
It seems to be very narrow operating room to.
Yeah, it's almost like it's you have to have good dexterity. I think it's good to maybe practice this a couple times.
Yes.
So I'm just going to sit there and simulate it. I did get gas for it the other day.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But it's all about lightweight. Everything is light, so they want to have that as short as possible. So slide in the phone out. Obviously, that's the key.
In and out pry in there in the corner?
Yeah,
or?
exactly. So, like I was saying previously, there's not a lot of storage room in here. The glove box effectively is this little thing in between your feet, which can, for scale, that's the big iPhone. It can't even take that. So it can't take a big iPhone.
So no gold bars, no gold doubloons, no box.
That's like a switchblade only. I think you
okay.
can only do a knife. I don't know where you would put your gun. You'd have to you need a fanny pack with this car, I think. Maybe we'll do a branded fanny pack at some point. So like I was saying earlier, I like this sort of driving position where the steering wheel is all the way out to me so that I can be leaned back as much as possible and then as flat as my legs can go. Starting the car, cool startup sequence. Sounds familiar, sounds kind of like the Raptor a little bit. Obviously it's derived from the same engine. All of your controls are on the steering wheel. So you have your volume here, you can skip through stations, you have your different settings for the car. So you have VMAX, wet, normal, sport, and track. When you put it in track mode, the whole car drops really fast. So as soon as you hit OK, That's it, done. So it's way faster. All the hydraulic stuff is way faster actuating than any of the cars that I've ever been in.
Want to do it again? That's crazy.
Pretty fast. You got all your stuff like a race car. You can when you hit the high beams, if you see it in the window up ahead, they come on in sequence, so you can be it can look really cool, like you're at the club, strobe light style. It's kind of like, it's a little bit like the Ferrari wheel, but it's more like a GTE race car wheel. Modes on here, buttons in different places so you don't mix them up, and then you have your turn signals on each side.
Dude, it's really loud. The engine is super loud.
So it's got kind of a cool noise to it. But maybe we should go take a lap and just sort of see, check it out, just some impressions from the road.
Yep.
All right. It's only I got 58 miles on it, so I have to do like 600 miles before I can like actually rip it. So that's gonna take some time, but we can't curb out for like 4 days. So yeah, we actually managed to go to do the perfect circle. We got children with no traffic. I passed two people on the outside and went back down the loop and had like the whole way. They're really fun. 675. So like aero stability wise, it's fucking fun. Yes, the front part of the aero splitter really gets in there. It's a lot of flappers. Yeah.
All right, man. I'm very glad for the air conditioning in this car.
Air conditioning's nice because in Fresno right now it's 100 plus degrees. So the rotary dial is pretty nice. It actually gives you good feedback in terms of the like your fingers. When I was talking to the delivery specialist, he mentioned that the real key for the surfaces in the car on the inside is they want everything to be operated with gloves on, to be able to, because they're really just so focused on the sort of trackability of the car and really the fact that you can have two hands on the wheel kind of scenario. So right now we're riding in sport mode. That was the lift going down.
It has a loud pop.
Yeah.
That I wasn't expecting at all.
Because unlike the McLaren hydraulic system, this has like a combination of a hydraulic and a hardware thing, where they've got an actual rocker that when you press it, this whole thing moves. It's like a big triangular piece of metal, and that sets the ride height, sets everything else. But like it normal speeds at like medium throttle, there's no drone, but you can hear a little bit of engine noise, and then you can start to hear the turbos a little bit. I'm not sure how well it's going to pick up on there, but you can definitely hear it in here. So let's just kind of throw it through this corner, this corner complex, and kind of see how it goes.
Messing up the face tracking.
Sorry. So how do you feel through the seat with like the suspension itself?
It's very impressive. Yeah, you know,
I can put it in comfort setting if you want. We can put it in comfort shock mode.
I thought it was gonna be much stiffer than what
So now I've got it in comfort shock mode.
That's not bad. Not at all.
You can feel it soaking things up. You can hear it soaking things up because there's not a lot of insulation in the car, so you can tell when you're going over bumps and stuff like that there's bumps happening.
Yeah.
But the car is sort of internally absorbing it, you know, and just kind of floating over it like a dirt bike, where it's not bucking at all, even though there's a little bit of transmission of vibration through the steering wheel. You're not really getting it through your feet or through your butt into the seat. And that could be an effect of the seat actually having padding to it, you know, because sometimes people in these types of cars, they when they design them, they say, okay, they have to be as light as possible, like the Senna seat, and the Senna seat weighs, you know, 6 pounds or something like that. But the problem with that is when you have a car that it's so focused that it tends to be a little bit less usable on the road, and unless you're such a track guy, you know, that you're only going to drive a car like the Senna on the road or on the track, the road driving you're going to do could potentially be miserable. And I think Ford's got a really good balance with this, where it has a sort of 720 vibe to it that you can tighten it up and make it more aggressive, but its default setting is going to be a little bit more livable, you know, as opposed to a Carrera GT or maybe even a GT2 RS or something like that.
Right.
I think that the exotic feel is transmitted through every rotation of the wheel. You know, really, like as you're rolling down the road, you feel exotic. You know, you have the really high trapezoidal windows. You have a exotic suspension.
It's really comfortable, man. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah.
It's actually more comfortable, I feel, than the GT3.
Yes.
But it's, you know,
Well, it's got a much more sophisticated suspension.
right.
I think that's what it comes down to. Is the GT3 is built to last, and this is built to do a little bit more, you know, in that regard. Which is why, I mean, frankly, it's hard to compare due to just the MSRP difference. You know, it makes it a little bit more. So now I put it back in sport mode. You can feel a little bit more of the freeway.
We're in Mexico.
Yeah. I only drive fast in Montana and Mexico. But, you know, just like loping along, you get some road noise, but it's not, we can still kind of have a conversation.
Yeah.
You kind of feel this sort of cradle, the suppleness of the car.
It's also, I mean, in terms of being low to the ground,
Yeah.
how do you compare it to, like, say, the P1?
It feels very similar to the P1. It feels softer, you know, like more cushion. The P1, it really feels like unwieldy at times. It feels really, really, really stiff and really, really, really like, I guess, low, you know, and unusably low. It feels like the corners of the P1 jut out to the sides a little bit more, whereas this car really feels a little bit more tucked in on top of the wheels. This is kind of a little corner that I like to go through as kind of like a test loop. I think this is where we drove the 911R.
Yeah.
So we're just going to kind of enter into this corner at 3 times the limit that the posted sign says.
Yeah, that seatbelt works.
You got to be friends with the people next to you in this car because it's a little tire squeal there.
I'm not purposely trying to touch your arm, man.
That's okay.
That is impressive, man.
That noise you heard was the rear air brake. that, but that's a pretty high G load going through there.
Yeah, the gimbal on our camera was struggling to keep up, so to speak.
And then you can, you just put it back in a normal mode, and then just chill. Put it in comfort shocks, kind of float along. That's the 4GT. Not a lot of room though, so I got to figure out for track days where we're gonna put the helmet and do all that stuff. It's like significantly less room than any car I've ever had. Although I guess the Senna is going to be the same. It doesn't have a front trunk. There's only a little tiny space back here where you can put like 1 or 2 helmets in the Senna. And I don't even know if you can put a closed face helmet back there. But it's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's impressive.
I'm pretty psyched. I think everything feels nice. All the surfaces feel nice. But you see here, like, how this really absorbs a lot of the sunlight.
It looks very soft,
Yeah.
but not supple.
Wow.
How is the, in terms of your instrument clusters?
So the instrument cluster, you can go through the gauges and kind of adjust. We're averaging a whopping 10 miles to the gallon now. You can get your exact RPMs, or you can get gauges with temperature, PSI. But when they deliver the car to you, they give you an entire rundown of, okay, this is what happens if it's locked and you can't get in. This is what happens if it's if you're low on gas and how to use that. This is there's all these little things, so you learn how to get into the car. And I think they've really thought about it. For whatever reason, American car companies tend to think about the practical aspects of car usage, and to be honest with you, the sync system is pretty nice. I think that it's actually pretty effective to delivering the information you want. Actually, I should probably just peel this off. So stereo's okay, could probably be better, but I don't even know how many speakers it has. It's not like a Burmeister thing, and you don't really want that. This car feels closer to the race car version than any car I've ever driven.
Really?
Yeah, easily. I'd say, because the thing is now that the new GT3 RS, because it has the rear steering, it's a little bit vaguer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the steering aspect of it, even though the handling is amazing. I think it's important to understand the difference between those two things. Handling is weight transfer and rotation of the car. Steering is steering, which is just sort of an accuracy thing. And I think the most accurate steering on any car made in the last 10 years is the 675 LT. Second place finishers would be like the 997 4.0 RS and the Carrera GT. I think a lot of other car companies have inaccurate steering, but this car and the Pista, I would say, are contenders to be put in that same category of having just the perfect amount of weight in the steering wheel so that you're not over transmitting information, and you're also not turning more than you want to. Because if steering is too light and you're enthusiastic and you're on the track and you're driving fast, then you're like, oh shit, that's too much. And then you're constantly pulling steering out. But every time you pull steering away from the front tires of the car, you're doing something to the back where you're sending mixed signals, and the car doesn't like that. So having a heavier steering allows you to feed in the steering as you need it, and then intentionally kind of gauge, all right, I need to get to 6 and 12 from 3 and 9, and so this is how fast I need to do it. The heavier the steering is, the longer it takes you to get there anyways, so it almost dumbs it down so you don't do it too fast. The 458 had such lightning fast steering that you could turn it completely like this with the same amount of effort that it takes to drive the car one-handed. So for me, it was an inaccurate steering wheel. I thought the Speciale was a little bit better, but I really think the Pista is good. And I think this car and the Pista would probably be the most direct competitors in terms of weight, power ratio, tire size, overall just dynamics of the car, handling of the car, enjoyment of driving the car, very similar to that. Which is to say that, you know, it means that the Pista is actually really a good deal at the $450,000 level if these cars are MSRPing around $550 or more. So that's just something to think about on the used market down the road, because as they're making more Ford GTs and announcing more Ford GTs, it's almost like, how rare is the car going to stay? You know, and same thing with the Pista. How rare is that car going to be? Although we all know that they're not coming out with the Spider version of this, they just announced a track-only version with more horsepower and a roof scoop, which, you know, I think you've been known to kind of.
Yes, I'm a roof scoops connoisseur, man.
Right. You're a roof scoop sommelier, right?
Exactly.
So
don't mess up the student driver, man.
The student driver. I'm trying to stay away from them. I'm going to go the opposite way. But just the way this thing goes around corners is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So if I take off traction control, it says that, you know, I can put it into different modes. Now I can put it in traction control off and ESC kind of on, and it just gives me a little less wobble through the corner. Not that I'm going to drift it, you know, through here, but you're getting a little more tire noise now from me. Just getting a little bit more entry rotation, manipulating the car a little bit more.
It feels a lot smaller than it looks.
The car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like the Carrera GT. When you have the inboard shocks, it almost like it puts like the elbows up of the car a little bit, where it feels like, you know, you're kind of like you're pushing against something, so you're able to like almost. This sounds really weird, but it almost feels like you're cornering downhill every time, like a running back. You know, they like tuck down and then they go to the side. You know, and I think that's something that is sort of important with these types of cars. As a cop vacates our old stomping ground there, so that's good. So now we're going to go the nose lift. In order to get back to our parking spot, we can only lift activated after below 25 miles an hour. But it happens so fast. It's
like instantaneous.
Yeah, it's like instantaneous. So by the time I was telling you earlier, by the time you lift your finger off of the button, it's already done, which is one of the coolest aspects of this car, because it just makes it that much more usable. And if you can use the car, you will use the car, and that's the deal. If the car's unusable, you never drive it, which means you never enjoy it. And although this is, I would say, the prettiest car released in the last couple of years.
That's a bold statement.
I think it's the prettiest car.
It does look really good. Like,
the Valkyrie's not out yet, so I'm just, as a caveat, I think the Valkyrie is super cool. But the Valkyrie does not currently exist. It's just still a concept car, as far as I'm concerned. Whereas this car truly does exist. It's really here, and it is really, really close. So this stack, though, represents exactly how much movement you have between two friends and two awkward road trip companions. You know, you can get super awkward really quick.
You really do have to be cognizant of where your hands are.
Yeah, because you could just put your hand, you just reach right out.
Yeah,
there it is. I mean, I'm just right there. Like you don't even know.
No,
like that quick.
Although, if you got a lady in the car,
that could be good.
It's, you know. Anyway,
so let's watch this. So we're gonna drop the car now. Okay. That's it. Done.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Crack these windows a little bit so it doesn't sit on there. Decent headroom. You know, I can put a helmet on in here, no problem. And I think this is gonna be one of the most keepery cars I've ever had in my life.
Look at that 9 on the door.
Yeah, you can see that right there. It's kind of ghosted in there.
All right, thanks, man.
Yeah, dude.
Pop check, pop, recording, pop, tap, boom, pop, pop, boom, ba doom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba doo, boom, 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 ba boom, boom. It's the Throttle Talks with Rich and CJ. That's it, right?